And we're back to Dora Fong for the next question, and it's going to be directed to Sandra Smith, right?
Yes. We've heard that the ice caps are melting, the oceans are rising, and there are many climate changes. And many have argued that human activity is the cause of all that. Others have disagreed. Is our civilization on a sustainable path, or is it on the road to catastrophe? And what would your party propose to protect the environment?
Well, we think that the main problem, again, with the environment, looking at it politically, is that Canadians in this country and all over the world, at the present time, governments are not ruling in the interests of the people, because the people aren't making the decisions. If they did, and then I'm convinced that they would pass all the legislation necessary to make sure that the environment is protected and that these catastrophes don't happen. There's a lot, Joan previously gave the example of Walkerton, and it's created as a mystery that there's some mismanagement or some lack of accountability. But if you don't have the profit motive deciding these policies, and then human beings, first of all, human civilization wouldn't be here if it hadn't been winning the struggle to dominate nature in its service by also preserving nature. So these questions can be dealt with, but first we must empower the people.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Mr. Deans, you're up next.
The fundamental problem with the environment is that individual human intelligence has become disconnected from cosmic intelligence. And by cosmic intelligence, I mean the unified field of natural law that governs the whole universe in perfect order and harmony without a problem. When individual intelligence is disconnected from nature's intelligence, then human beings act in such a way that violate natural law. And this creates problems in their own life and creates pollution in the environment. The Natural Law Party's programs, such as the Transcendental Meditation Program, which allow individual intelligence to experience finer and finer levels of intelligence, and then to experience the unified field of natural law, allows the individual to spontaneously begin to act more in accord with natural law, and thereby avoid problems which create pollution in the physiology and pollution in the environment. So the Natural Law Party supports all efforts to create an environment that is supportive to the human physiology and is against anything which creates poisons in the environment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Figueroa.
Well, our party certainly believes that the global environmental crisis is perhaps one of the best examples that bring into sharp relief the problems of the nature of our system in general, of the capitalist system in general. The environmental crisis has not been solved by capitalism. In fact, it continues to get worse and worse. And the reason is not just a question, an abstract question of human activity, but rather the vested interests of the largest corporations that place their own narrow concerns to increase profit ahead of the interests of the people and ahead of the interests of the environment itself. Whether it's clear-cutting policies or destroying of the of rainforests, or continued reliance on fossil fuel technology, which serves the interests of the oil companies but fouls our environment. On all of these points, it shows that there is a growing cleavage, if you will, between the interests of the big transnational corporations and of this planet as a whole. And why, for instance, declarations like the Kyoto Declaration on lowering dependence on fossil fuels is not being properly acted upon by our governments. It's because they're in the pocket of the big corporations.
Thank you very much. Joan Russo of the Green Party, this is your question, I guess.
You were saying that there's some difference of opinion about the anthropogenic causes of climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel, International Panel, determined that there definitely was anthropogenic causes to climate change. And what we need to do is to implement the precautionary principle. Where there is a threat or a probability, strong probability of climate change, the lack of full scientific certainty shall never be used as a reason for postponing measures to prevent the threat. The question is, how do we prevent the threat? In 1988, in the Changing Atmosphere Conference in Toronto, academics, politicians were calling for at least 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Then we go to 92, and I believe the Mulroney government said by the year 2000 we will be below 1990 levels. Then we go to Kyoto. Always procrastination. The thing is to act now. But look what the government's doing. I was at Chantilly in Quebec demonstrating against the reopening of the nuclear plant. Canada is so deluded, thinking that Canada can continue producing CO2 emissions, but then sell CANDU reactors around the world and open up the nuclear plants here. It's absolutely obscene and absurd. What we have to look at as well is that I calculated that 80% of the donations to the existing elected parties come from the greenhouse gas producers. And that is one reason we don't see the resolve to really address this issue.
Thank you very much. Paul Hellyer on the environment.
Yes, last February I had the pleasure of participating, as did Joan, in an environmental conference in Victoria called the Climates of Change. And it was one of those bad news, good news situations. The bad news was that if we don't do anything, the heating of the atmosphere will continue at a rate which puts our planet in peril. The good news was that there are several dramatic, wonderful opportunities to change from fossil fuels to other sources of energy. And the list was very long. It included wind and wave and physical things which were just absolutely incredible, almost boggle the mind. So it is possible for us to do something and to do it relatively quickly. Two things I think are really standing in the way: the political will and the lobbying on the part of the fossil fuel industry. We have in the United States a government which is dominated by the oil industry. Mr. Bush is really part of it. We have in Canada a government which is dominated by the government of the United States, and we lack the political will due to the contribution system of taking the action that is necessary. But we must if we want to save our planet. We can do it, and it's up to us.
Thank you. Mr. St. Maurice, the Marijuana Party's response to the environmental question.
Concerning the environment, certainly if the political will right now in Ottawa regarding the environment is anything like the political will regarding the marijuana issue, then certainly there is great reason to be fearful for the future of our environment. Given that, it's hard to take a question on the environment when we're on a panel with a party called the Green Party. But what I can say about the Marijuana Party is that there is no negative impact on the environment from marijuana. If anything, it's demonstrated to be a great asset to the environment, either for producing more oxygen, for preventing cutting trees, for using fiber, and for using biomass to produce a clean burning fuel. So all of these applications could be pushed further. Again, the reason why we're not pushing the hemp industry to the full maximum potential is because there's bureaucratic loopholes that are there for one reason. Consumption of recreational marijuana is prohibited. If we can get that out of the formula, then hemp farmers can actually push and maximize the advantageous sides of hemp for fuel, fiber, not cutting trees, reducing desertification, using the seed to feed people and reduce world hunger, and reduce greenhouse emissions with the clean burning fuel and by creating more oxygen. So marijuana is definitely an asset for the environment, and we have to show the government that we want them to move on it.
Thank you very much. We're into our fifth question.